Welcome. Good night.
Hey, welcome everybody.
Hello.
This is Reaper's Digest. I'm Blake Ray.
And I'm Duke Ralston.
And I am MC Williams.
We have a special guest with us today.
Hello.
Yeah. So, we're going to get into some indie horror, talk about MC Williams' story today, The Library. We're going to be talking about the idea of making and doing and the DIY ethic that is so available in horror.
Mm-hmm.
So, as always, I am the lead singer of the band Blood Oaks. And Dude, you are?
I am. I play the Grim Reaper in Tennessee Macabre. We host B horror movies, classic B horror movies.
I heard you had a very special guest recently.
We did. Well, of course, we shot Plan 9 from Outer Space with a special guest host. Mm-hmm. That would have been you. And I believe we're going to be doing a few more things around with you coming down.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself, MC.
Yeah, I am the host of the Myths Your Teacher Hated podcast, which tells mythology, folklore, and fairy tales from around the world with all of the sex and violence left in. I'm also a writer of primarily horror, sci-fi, science fiction, and urban fantasy. Working on a YA story set in the Aztec mythos right now, as well as a somewhat Lovecraftian story for a LeVar Burton's podcast.
Nice. Nice. What are you drinking tonight, Duke?
Well, I am drinking Straight and Narrow from Common John Brewing, my favorite microbrewery, located in Manchester. And I've been sitting here staring at this for the past 20 minutes like a dog staring at a bone. I'm so glad to pop the top on it. What are you drinking?
I got Terrapin, brewed out of Athens.
Yep.
This is Los Bravos. It's a Mexican-style lager, which I have not had before.
Okay.
I was feeling
good.
fancy.
I've never had it before either.
All right. In honor of the two of you, I've actually got a duo. I've got first the Everything Plus Breakfast Stout out of Nashville, Tennessee.
Ooh.
And then the Steady Hand Never Ending Brunch out of Atlanta.
Sounds good.
Go. Best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which one are you starting with?
Starting with breakfast, obviously.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. How is it?
It's delicious. I mean, It does taste kind of like jam and toast, but not bready, heavier on the sweet.
Okay. Yeah, this is pretty good. Los Bravos, of course, is a reference to the Braves, which is right down the street from me.
Yeah.
Mickey, you know.
I do.
Been to my house. Full disclosure, I've known Mickey a long time.
Okay.
But we've got kind of a little bit hoppier than your average. Whoop. What happened? Oh, there we go.
Okay.
A little bit hoppier than your average Mexican lager.
Mm.
Sounds good. This is just a pale ale. It's very light and summery. A little bit of a hoppy flavor, but not much. Very good. Very refreshing. A little bit of a citrus hint.
Oh, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I used to know a guy way back in the day. He made his own hooch, and he made a grapefruit IPA, right?
Oh, wow.
And it was heavy on the grapefruit, light on the IPA, and he would sell it to you in a milk jug.
Yeah. Wow. I've had milk jug beer before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He called it a lawnmower ale.
That's all right.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
yeah.
one jug of that and your grass is trimmed.
Well, either that or you don't care anymore.
Either way, it's a good day.
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Mickey.
All right. I am an autistic structural engineer who does a lot of artistic stuff on the side just for funsies. I've been running the Myths Your Teacher Hated podcast for about 5 years now. I do a lot of speaking on the local convention circuit. I do a lot of short fiction writing, some mystery writing. I'm considering putting together a self-published series of short stories, mostly in the horror genre. Yeah, I think that's about covers it.
Yeah. We're going to come back to that idea of self-publishing.
Yeah.
Because that, I think, is important to what we're talking about today. So the story in question, because I wanted to have an anchor story for this, is a story you published in my magazine, Pulp Factory, and our second issue, called The Library. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the story?
Okay, yeah. The library has its nugget, as most of my stories do, in a nightmare that I had of being outside of this very creepy building and going inside and having just this extremely distorted vision of a library. And so when I saw the prompt art for that month of the guy with a torch, what looked to me like a wall of books, I immediately connected the dream to that and went straight for it. I love magical realism, so it's basically taking the idea of what changed one thing and it completely changes reality. In this case, the idea that knowledge is power. What if that was literal? What if you really did, books were literally a power, had a gravitational force, gravitational pull that could warp reality around it, and you connect all of that knowledge into the library? What does that do? And the rest of the story just kind of followed from there.
It's a fantastic story.
Well,
Yes,
thank you.
it is.
Yeah. I know you were partial to it, dude.
I loved it, man. I love the idea of a library, kind of a extraplanetary library that you access through a pathway through the stars. I just thought that was really cool.
Well, I appreciate that. I really enjoyed writing that one.
Yeah.
Well,
Also, like the
interesting.
fact that little Billy's there. You know.
Yeah, Billy is based off a different nightmare of mine.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's
I
a
thought
recurring nightmare I had when I was 5. That,
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah. So, in case you don't know, the story is about a young man who has been assigned a take-home test by his professor, English teacher. It doesn't really specify what grade he's in, does it?
It doesn't specify grade. It actually doesn't specify gender either. I very deliberately never specify that.
Oh, yeah. But it's first person, sort of stream of consciousness. I guess I say he because I was putting myself into the character.
Yeah, that's
Me
the idea,
too.
is to make that easy to do.
Yeah. So I definitely, I identify he, him. And so, I was putting myself into the character. And he goes into, or they go into the library, the narrator, to get a copy of the Odyssey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Odyssey, I think, is very important here because, well, one, it's kind of a little in-joke, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're going on a journey, so we're going to find the Odyssey. But also the idea of hubris is important to the Odyssey. I would say it's the most important, consistent theme that you're going to pull out of the analysis of the Odyssey. That's sort of your first level.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can talk about masculinity, toxic masculinity, and all that stuff later. But your first level is you're going to look at hubris, right? And I think that a lot of this has to do with hubris, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're doing a deep dive on the Odyssey right now, so that was very much on my mind when I'm writing this.
Yeah.
I love the choice of the Odyssey because, to me, that's kind of the very beginning of Western literature, and it is, you're going on an Odyssey of the library to study the very roots of storytelling.
Yeah, and that's sort of the implication there. And there's a lot to really pull out of the Odyssey. The one of the main themes that they keep going back to in the Odyssey is the idea that there's a right way to adventure and there's a wrong way to adventure. And if you do things the right way, you'll succeed. If you do it the wrong way, if you rely on yourself, if you deviate from the correct path, things go very poorly very quickly. And so you've got our narrator who is doing things the Odysseus way, and then you've got poor Billy, who is the suitors, who is everyone else in that story who tries and fails and ends up dashed on the rocks. It's Agamemnon. It's everyone else.
Yeah.
Everyone whose ears weren't covered.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love the use of the Odyssey. I love the little nods to classical literature throughout. I'm not going to spoil the story too much because I do want you to go read it. Because I think it's really
some of the books that attack you, that attack the narrator on the way in. I love the choice of books that, like I said, we're not going to spoil it, but the choice of books that come up. One in particular, I just love that comes up to attack. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time. I had a whole list of different options and how it would work out before I finally decided on the ones I ended up deciding on.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me ask you something, Mickey.
Mm-hmm.
How much Lovecraft is in this?
As with pretty much all modern horror, it's the foundation of the idea of something that you don't ever really get a good glimpse of that is warping reality. And if you look at it too closely, things are going to go badly is definitely in there, as well as the idea that knowledge is dangerous, which is another heavy Lovecraftian theme. It's really hard to write modern horror without some Lovecraftian underpinnings, but this one definitely goes real heavy on the Lovecraft.
You still there?
I'm still here.
Oh, my router keeps saying it's not. Anyway, I don't think it's affecting anything.
No,
my router just keeps yelling at me.
Yeah, you're coming through on this end, so I think it may just be interrupting on your side.
Me. So, in this, you write, I believe it's on the 4th page of their, or rather it's on the 2nd page.
Mm-hmm.
To find the library, you just follow the stars. Or maybe it's more the spaces between the stars.
Mm-hmm.
Look up into the night sky where the moon isn't and sort of unfocus your mind. If you do it right, you'll feel the seismic pull of the accumulated books of the library. After that, you follow the feeling until the architecture crawls out of the night to sprawl before you. Just make sure you don't accidentally wander somewhere worse by accident.
Yeah.
So that's Lovecraft through.
Oh,
that's
hardcore
pure Lovecraft. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the honor.
I love the librarian. I'm thinking of. It makes me think. I had a great elementary school librarian, but it makes me think of a really horrible elementary school librarian that you're coming up to face. That's really a Lovecraftian monster,
Mm-hmm.
and you never go into a huge description of the librarian, but you kind of get the feel that it's some kind of nebulous monster. A book hits it on the snout and it's coiled around the book. So it's kind of dragony, kind of reptilian. I loved it.
Yeah, I definitely was playing with the idea of what would hoard books. Obviously a dragon of some sort, but I didn't want to give too much of a description because in my mind and in a lot of analyses of horror that I've read, the most horrible thing you can describe is not describing because the audience will fill in something worse than anything you can come up with.
Yeah.
And so if you give their imaginations room to play, they will do all the work for you.
Are you sure it's not a giant spider? Because maybe it should be a giant spider at the end.
Shelob?
Yeah, God. Here's the king. A man who can write 1,000 pages and then just not end it. I'm convinced King's books are so long because he doesn't know how to end.
Yeah, I mean, he's one hell of a storyteller, but he is in desperate need of an editor.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like that, there are a couple of his books that I really love. I always loved the stories, but some of the books he's written, it just kind of drones on and on with descriptions of things that don't really need to be described, you know?
Yeah, it definitely becomes a problem. I really enjoyed his Dark Tower series because it moved along at a little better clip and did
Yeah,
a really cool job of wandering through the books, but never really getting bogged down in just eloquent prose, really.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, I think that is something interesting to say here. The idea of being in desperate need of an editor.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, indie creators are without editors or beta readers.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into that. How do you approach that?
I'm actually in a couple of Facebook groups dedicated to authors helping authors, and then 2 that are dedicated especially to finding beta readers. And
Mhm.
so for this story, I found 2 different readers who significantly helped me improve this story, helped me find passages that were clunky, find stuff that just didn't make sense. And the story was much, much better for their input.
Hmm.
Okay.
How important do you think the beta reader is to the writing process?
I mean, honestly, I think it's vital because by the time you've written something, short fiction for sure, but particularly when you start getting in the longer the novella and the novel length, you have stared at this thing for so long and you've read it so many times that your brain fills in what you expect to be there rather than what is. And so you have a fresh pair of eyes come in, read through it, and they'll see something. They'll go, "Well, this doesn't make sense," or "What's going on here?" or find inconsistencies, point out stuff that just didn't work that you think is great, but it doesn't work for them.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
and
it.
Duke, you know something about writing a longer work.
Yeah, yeah. And I can definitely, you do get kind of that 100-yard stare. And, you, I go back and do a reread now of some of the stuff that I wrote because I'm doing a novella,
Mhm.
and I've been working on this since January, and I'll go back and look at some of the stuff I wrote in January and go, that's not how I remember it, you know.
Mhm.
So yeah, beta readers critical, critical.
Yeah. In that case, I serve as the beta reader,
Yes,
but also the editor. Now, I
yes.
want to tell you, Mickey,
Mhm.
I was mad at you when I first read the story
All right, I'll bite. Why?
because of the capitalization. Until I realized the library was an eldritch thing, I was like, you don't capitalize library.
Yeah, I had. That's one I actually had to fight with the beta readers on because they kept going, "This doesn't make sense." And like, "No, get to the end, it will."
Yeah, it made sense in the end.
Yeah.
So, I'm brown bagging it today, gentlemen.
Something that I would like to ask.
Uh-huh.
Billy asked if he would take him with him when he left.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing he didn't take him with him. Did you toy with that? Was that deliberate? Did you think about doing it another way?
Yeah, I played around a lot with how to end that interaction because I figure Billy wants out of there. Billy feels trapped. Billy has
Yeah.
been in there for who knows how long and will be in
Mhm.
there for who knows how much longer. But the narrator also doesn't really trust Billy. And
Right.
there's that whole thing where it's like, how do I know you're not going to betray me? I'll just come back and smash you. It's like, if I'm betraying you, you'll never get the chance.
Yeah.
And so I do think the narrator themselves were conflicted because on the one hand, it is the right thing to do is to help out someone in need. But on the other
Mhm.
hand, this is someone who got to where they are based on their own choices, their own hubris.
Right.
This is sort of, again, I was playing with the idea of Greek myth of like Hercules descending into the underworld and meeting people who've been trapped there on their own quests. And does he save them or not? And he ends up not saving them because they need to make their own quest. They at the end of the day, they have to have their own adventure. They have to have their own odyssey, and they have to get themselves out.
Okay. That's I kind of wondered if that was part of the answer. So that yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think I want to talk to both of y'all about the idea of the freedom and the burden of freedom
Mhm.
in writing for a small publication or for podcasts or things like that. Because I find that without a set task, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Without going in with a set of guidelines, a set of rules, I find myself a little bit at sea. There's a burden of choice here. You
Mhm.
know, I could write about anything, so what do I write about?
Yeah.
How do you get around that as a writer?
Well, I tell you, I have toyed with this for years and years and years because I have dabbled with writing since I was in college. And the thing that I always come back to a couple things. Number one, Mark Twain said that I believe it was Mark Twain said you should always write about what you know. And so in my stories, I try to keep the geography in Tennessee, Georgia. Never really written anything about Alabama, but I probably will one day. I keep it in the area that I know and love. And I the one thing that has always inspired me that I've always loved is Pulp Fiction. So I don't really care to write outside of that. I like to write horror. I like to write fantasy, and have toyed with some ideas from science fiction, but mostly horror and fantasy. And so that's how I decide what I'm going to do.
Okay. Yeah, I feel sort of similar. For me, it's more I try to think of what's a story that I want to read that I can't find. Let me write that story. And so that's how I ended up with the YA novel that I'm writing right now is I really love the Aztec mythos and there really aren't any good books about it. And that's
Yeah.
disappointing because it's such a cool mythos. There are such cool gods, such cool
Mhm.
monsters. I mean, some of that is because a lot of what we know about that was absolutely destroyed by the Spanish Inquisition.
Mhm.
And so there's not a whole lot, there's big gaps. And so there's just not as much complete information as we have in other places. But what we do have is so rich and so cool. As far as your thing about being adrift at sea, yeah, the podcast has really forced discipline on me because I've got a bi-weekly release schedule, which means come hell or high water, I have to have an episode ready every week because I've got to have a week to edit it. I have to have that time. So I don't have a choice but to sit down and get it done. And that has really taught me how to get past this whole writer's block thing is to sit down and write it. And even if it's terrible, I can't remember where the original quote but it's something along the lines of you can edit a bad book, but you can't edit the book you didn't write.
I have always told my students that you've got to have something in front of you to edit. You know?
Always.
So,
And
yeah.
you know, I feel like I've tried to create a mythos that revolves around um, local stories. The cave goblins figure in just about everything I've written, except absolute. I've got some absolute fantasy pieces I haven't really sent you that don't involve that. But I wanted to kind of create my own geography to write in, and being in the area that I'm in, caves and sinkholes are common. They're scary places. I'm about 200, well, about a half mile, 2 miles from a sinkhole called the Devil's Den that,
Mm-hmm.
I was just taught growing up, you never go near it because you die. So that sort of becomes a center point of what I'm writing. There's evil in the hole, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of another thing that I've chosen to do.
And of course, that's all informed by the idea of the Kelly Hopkinsville event, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Kelly
Which is
Hopkinsville, and then there was an internet. And I'm trying to think of the name. Hellier, Kentucky.
yeah.
There, there's an internet series that I watched and I really loved it. That delved into Hopkinsville. You could involve the Bell Witch of Tennessee in that mythos very easily.
Oh, I love the Bell
Um,
Witch.
Huh?
I love the Bell Witch.
I do too. Petrified of it, but I love it. So there's a lot of Southern folklore and horror that you can very easily pull into that mythos.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the Bell Witch is so cool. We did a whole Halloween episode on it because it's just so much fun.
Oh yeah. The house I'm in right now, this house, my mother-in-law just recently bought it, but the man that used to live here when I was real little, they got together. There was a book that had come out called The Bell Witch of Tennessee that everybody was reading. I mean, it was on every nightstand table. And so a bunch of them got together and went to Bell Witch Cave. And of course, Lynchburg is between here and Bell Witch Cave. So they had an adequate supply of Jack Daniels before they got there.
Of course.
And they came back in and they were telling all kinds of stories. And I had seen The Wizard of Oz and I was just petrified. I slept with a jug of water by my bed for about 5 years because I was going to pour it on the Bell Witch.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, let's talk about the world of indie publishing, because I want to say that one of the big things that has come out, one of the big positives no one talks about out of the world of on-demand books, Kindle, Fire, Kindle, what's the other one, Mickey?
KDP.
KDP. Kindle Direct Publishing.
That's the one.
One of the things that's come out of that world, yeah, it did kill the local bookstore. It did. And that is depressing, right?
Yeah.
But it has also democratized writing.
Yes.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah, there's been a real renaissance of indie publishing.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
I mean, very, very mixed because I love bookstores. I love used bookstores in particular. I mean, I love, there's still one near me. There's a Half Price Books that I just love to go in and just, I don't know what I'm looking for. I'll just wander around looking at titles until something grabs me. And that's how I find most of my books, is just finding something I don't know, find by an author I don't know. That's the next one I'm going to read. It looks cool. And so the loss of that, the loss of as many bookstores as we used to have, and the opportunity to go just discover books, I do feel like is a huge loss. But I do think there is something incredible about the idea that anyone with access to the internet, which is most people now, you can go and write a story and put it up on Kindle and the entire world can access it. The entire world is now at your fingertips without having to go through a publisher, which is a double-edged sword.
Yeah. Publishers can, so what I find here is that it's like the democratization of information.
Mm-hmm.
In that it is definitely difficult, right? Mm-hmm. To decide if it's good or bad. Because on the one hand, you have all the information at your fingertips. On the other hand, you have all the world's misinformation at your fingertips.
Absolutely.
You know? Like,
I would point out that, yes, you're absolutely right, but that has always been there. Yellow journalism at the turn of the century got us into the Spanish-American War. Not the last turn of the century, but the turn of the century before that. Mm-hmm. And there's no doubt that newspapers were spreading misinformation. The internet is a huge source of misinformation, but it didn't invent it. You know, so it's always been there, and there's always been people purveying it. Yes, it's a problem. I agree. But I think, you know, anytime you have a change, there's good things that come out of it, and there's bad things that come out of it. And you know, you could, to go back even further. You know, yes, the internet's killed the bookstore, but the Gutenberg press killed monastic scriptorums, and it changed what you read and what you saw. Just as this is going to change what you know, the pulp magazines. The idea of taking the pulp magazines, the penny dreadfuls, these were guys that were publishing as cheaply as they could, and it allowed a diversification of storytelling that had not existed previously. So that's kind of the same thing we're seeing here.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. You're seeing you're seeing sort of the modern version of Weird Tales.
Yes,
on the internet.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's sort of what I was going for when I started Pull Factor.
Yeah,
And
that's what you do.
Version of Weird Tales. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, let's get into something a little more fun. You want to mix it up?
Yeah, let's mix it up.
All right, vampires or werewolves?
Ooh, vampires or werewolves? I love werewolves as a monster, but I like vampire stories better. I think they've got more flexibility to really explore more diverse themes. Werewolves tend to be more cities versus the rural, the beast versus the civilized. I think vampires are just the outsider, the idea of invasion, and I think there's a lot more to play with the idea of invasion.
Okay, what about you, dude?
Boy, that's a hard one. I probably am going to come down on the side of vampires as well, although I love a good werewolf tale. I think, to me, the challenge as a reader, I'm going to pick vampires. As a writer, I'm going to pick werewolves, because the challenge, there's a lot of diversity in the vampire story, but a lot of werewolf stories are pretty much the old Lon Chaney werewolf story that is recycled. It tends to be kind of the same thing over and over again. And I think that there's opportunity to diversify that a great deal.
I'd agree with that. I guess it's a while ago now, but there's a really amazing version of the werewolf with the loup-garou in the Dresden Files books that I thought was a really cool interpretation of the loup-garou, which is a werewolf you don't see a lot.
Right. Yeah. Which my grandmother was from New Orleans, so that was something I grew up with.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So, let's see. Print or e-reader?
Ooh, I mean, I love the smell of old books. And I've got literally a room full of books I collect, because I love used books. I love the idea of being able to go in and just pick up something I've never seen, and I don't know if it's going to be any good, but hey, it's $1. But at the same time, when I travel, I love being able to bring my e-reader with me, and because I'm going to get through a book, and not having to stuff my bag full of 4 books, which is a lot of weight, is nice. It's nice being able to have whatever book I want, or if I finish a series and there's a new one out, I can just go ahead and download it and read it immediately. There's a lot of freedom there. So I love print books, but I think I'm coming down on the e-reader.
What about you, dude?
Well, I don't know if even you know this about me, Blake, but my background, my degree is in history, medieval history. So I'm not over this whole Gutenberg press thing.
Okay. So you are coming down not with the print book or the e-reader, but with the scroll. The linen scroll bound in strange leather.
That's right. That's right. I'm going to say, for sitting down and reading, I like you're saying, I love the smell of books. There's a store in Chattanooga called McKay's Bookstores, used books. And I go in there quite often. And I got a book there on magic. And the book you could still smell the dragon blood incense in the book, which I thought was really cool when I'm reading. I love that about books. And you don't get that from an e-reader. By the same token, I can sit down with an e-reader or a computer, and I literally have thousands of texts at my fingertips. When I did my thesis in history, my thesis was out of Ireland, and I had to use interlibrary loans to borrow books from Trinity College in Dublin. Now all I'd have to do is get on the internet.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I remember a time where I would And, things are just changing so fast because well, I'd like to think I'm not that old. But we,
I like to think that too, but it ain't true.
older and older by the second.
Yeah.
But I used to go down to the library with a bag of dimes to make copies. For some of our younger listeners, Xeroxes were a poorly copied piece of paper
Yes.
that cost you a dime. And you couldn't read it when you needed to.
No, you couldn't. There was always a word that had to be interpreted.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of scanning text has been absolutely critical to my podcast because trying to get a copy of, say, the original Romance of the Two Dynasties is almost impossible.
Right.
But I can find it online.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like you two could. Go ahead.
One of my favorite websites is sacredtext.com.
Oh, I love sacred texts.
Great website. And I can go down. If I'd had that in college, I would have gone nuts. I can go in there and pull up a dozen texts on Celtic mythology or Roman mythology and just read whatever I want to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, them and World of Tales are both amazing resources.
Yes. Absolutely.
So, what's your favorite conspiracy theory?
Ooh. My favorite conspiracy theory is that Nessie is the ghost of a dinosaur who haunts Lake Ness.
That's a good one.
It hurts no one. I've chosen to believe it.
Yeah.
In the 70s, they tried to exorcise him.
Yep.
I did not know that.
Yep. They rode out into the middle of the lake and tried to exorcise the lake to get rid of the ghost dinosaur.
Oh, wow.
St. Columba did perform an exorcism on Loch Ness.
Mm-hmm.
The 9th century or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's happened more than once.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the one I'm talking about was in the 70s.
Right. I remember that. That.
Yeah. So, what's your favorite, dude?
Oh, dear. Of course, I'm very partial to the cave goblins. I love the what's the word I'm trying to think of? The Chariots of the God books from Kurt von Däniken.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure 100% buy it, but I can't 100% argue with it either.
Mm-hmm.
I really am into Roswell and the JFK conspiracy theories. There's a lot of stuff out there that, I like the idea that the Sphinx, the body, and this is one that appeals to me as a geologist, the body of the Sphinx has got to be at least 10,000 years old. Because it has a type of erosion that occurs from torrential rainfall, not from desert erosion. And they're very different. The torrential rainfall creates vertical erosion. Desert erosion is horizontal.
Well, the Egyptian dynasties are far older than we really can grasp.
Yes.
The ancient pyramids were as old to Cleopatra as Cleopatra is for us.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Exactly. And when the pyramids were built, there were still mastodons in parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was a leading question, which gets me to my favorite conspiracy theory.
Yes, let's hear it.
The moon is actually an alien space station.
Oh, wow. That's a good one.
Yeah. There's a whole website, and go look at it. It's like one of the, if you remember the old internet, green text on black, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's that same kind of writing.
Mm-hmm.
It's called whobuiltthemoon.com, which I'm surprised they snagged that, domain name up. But my man has some, he's swinging for the fences,
This really sounds like Doctor Who meets SCP.
It's right there, but it is dead serious.
That's amazing.
Wow.
So
I love using conspiracy theories as writing material.
Oh
oh
yeah.
yeah,
They're great.
oh yeah.
They're great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know the answer to this, but you didn't get to say like werewolf or vampires.
Werewolves all day.
No, of course.
Yeah, all day.
That shocks me not at all.
Yeah. I knew the answer, but I thought you ought to get to answer it.
Although I am currently writing a vampire novel, so
I mean, vampires are fun. There's so many cool things to do with it. Stephen King did a really cool short story called, I think, Ride of the Road Virus.
Yeah.
That is a really unique take on the vampire tale. It was in one of my short story collections. I love short story collections by diverse authors.
Yeah.
They're my favorite thing in the world. I love short story collections, but there's a really good one and one that I found that I'd never heard of before. But yeah, I'm not sure about the entirely title, but it's Stephen King something Road Virus. It's amazing.
I'll have to check that out. That sounds very interesting. Because Salem's Lot is one of my favorite all-time vampire stories.
Yeah, I listened to that episode, and somehow that story, I missed that one. I've read almost everything King's ever wrote, and somehow not that. I'm going to rectify that soon.
You should. It's great.
the road virus heads north.
That's the one.
The road virus heads north. Okay. I'll look that up.
Yeah. Is it Nightmares and Dreamscapes?
No, it was in I mean, it probably was, but it was in a diverse collection of vampire stories. I think it was just called Vampires. But it was, 30 stories about vampires from different authors.
Wow.
From, super famous ones like Stephen King to people you've never heard of. It's fantastic. I love meeting authors that way.
Yeah. What's your favorite part about writing?
Ooh, I think for me, it's that moment where you really get into the story and you kind of lose sight of the fact that you're writing and you're just kind of living the story. And the story is just kind of flowing and you're almost like you want to see where the story goes. I mean, I heavily storyboard, so I have a general idea, but being able to see it unfold and see how things actually work out is just exciting for me.
What about you, dude?
The same thing. I can sit down, and there's sometimes that I sit down and I am forcing myself to write, and it's like there's somebody with a bullwhip standing over me, and that hurts. But there are times when I sit down and it just flows, and I get with the story, and it, I look down and I've spent half the day and I've written 20 pages, and they're, at least in my mind, they're fabulous pages. They may not be. They haven't been edited yet, but that's my favorite part. So awesome. I got a question, and this is for both you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So independent publishing, indie novels, indie short stories. How do you market? I mean, there's so much stuff out there. How do you make your stuff stand out from the crowd?
Yeah.
It's a hard one.
Yeah.
It's difficult. And that's been one of the big struggles, even in the podcasting market, is trying to really build a following.
Yes.
And the best thing I've been able to come up with is to consistently put out good content, and word of mouth is one of the best features you can get. I spend a lot of time, well, not a lot of time. I spend some time on the convention circuit, meeting people, doing panels, and that's a lot of fun. And I get some new listeners that way. But the vast majority of the people that I find, I get because someone recommended the podcast on a Facebook group or on, somewhere else or in a review. And for the same reason, when I get something I really like, I will beat it into the ground. I will tell everybody about it. I will insist everybody go listen to it, because that's how it grows. That's how these things work.
I think it's sort of like, to piggyback off of what you were saying, Mickey. It's a lot of my marketing knowledge has to do with being in a band. And they say that you've got to play a small show the same way you play a big show. You've always got to play like you're in front of an amphitheater because you never know who's there.
Mm-hmm.
So the person you might be talking to, the person who reads the story might be somehow influential, or just have a big network of friends, or but I guess at the end of the day, that's really the hardest part about indie publishing. There's no built-in marketing.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's a part you got to figure out. And I know my friend, and you've met Neil Privet, has his own publishing company and has done several books independently that are on Amazon. And it's something he struggles with. It's something that I struggle with, and I've done a lot of marketing for my TV show online. I spend a lot of time doing that, and it's a hard slog. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff out there, and I've kind of reached the point. When you're younger, you expect to be, you have these pictures of yourself driving the fancy car and being the millionaire rider and having women chase you around. And I've kind of passed that point where, I hope 10 people read it and like it, and I'm happy.
Yeah, I
That's what I
absolutely
write.
feel you. Yeah, I feel the same way. Like with the podcast, I've got a decent listenership, but not anything to write home about. And I'm Twitter friends with a couple other podcasters who have like millions per episode of downloads.
Right.
And great for them. Their podcasts are amazing, but I take a lot of joy in knowing that they listen to my show.
Yeah. That's pretty cool too. Yeah.
It's like Blood Oaks. We were always called a musician's band.
Mm-hmm.
We're a band for people who are in bands.
Right.
Because we get on stage, we do the kind of stuff they wish they could do, which alienates the audience. Which, surprise, if women are chasing me, it's with pitchforks.
That's usually the way of it.
Well, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're still alive and twitching, right?
Yeah. Oh, God, don't bring that up. That was a reference to my first band.
Oh, okay. What was your first band?
The Cloned.
The Clone. Okay.
Which is hard to say.
Yeah.
I believe the first one was actually Sam R.I.
Oh, you're right. You're right. But spelled Sam-R-I.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Because I do not like your kick so high. I do not like your Sam R.I.
So we've known each other a long time. So we're coming up on the time, guys. I really appreciate you being here, Mickey. What do you got to promote? What do you got coming up?
Well, we've got the podcast that drops every 2 weeks. You can find it at mythsyourteacherhated.com. You can find it on Facebook at Hardcore Myth, or if you look for Myths Your Teacher Hated. We're on pretty much every major podcast app. I'm also going to be at Atlanta Comic-Con this year. It's going to be August 7th and 8th, which is going to be a Saturday and a Sunday. I'll be doing panels on Cinderella, Loki, Camelot, and the Green Knight. And there's one more that I'm blanking on at the moment, but it will come to me. And this hasn't been confirmed yet, but probably the big one on Labor Day, whose name I won't mention, but if you know it, you know which one I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Some sort of hoarder convention, right?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, Duke, what do you got to promote?
Well, of course, Tennessee Macabre is going to be on Saturday night on ITV Chattanooga, Other Worlds TV, and ECN TV. This Friday night, we're going to be on the Monster Channel, and we have an independent film called Tales of Dracula. This was produced up in Pennsylvania, and it's kind of an homage to monster mashups. Really great flick, and I would encourage everybody to come watch it on the Monster Channel. You can stream it on monsterchannel.com. I would also ask everybody to visit Tales of Dracula on Facebook and support these folks. They do great work, and they could use the support.
Awesome. Of course, I'm also always promoting Pulp Factory.
Yes.
Pulp Factory Easy. I've got another fantastic issue in the works.
Can't wait.
Fantastic issue in the works.
Very interested to see that one because I've got a submission in that one.
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil it for you.
I'm aware.
But you might see some more MC Williams work. I've got Blood Oaks. We're streaming on Psychotronic Frog.
Yes.
Which is a radio station that is run by a fantastic gentleman.
Yes.
So,
good looking.
Very.
Well, he's got the perfect face for radio.
Yes.
Which is why you do a video podcast, right?
Yep. But yeah, and we got a show coming up. We're going to probably live stream it. It'll be July 23rd. So, a lot to look forward to this Friday. I think that's about it.
Okay.
Once again, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Reaper's Digest.
Thank you for choosing the Reaper's Digest podcast. Like and subscribe. Recommend us to your friends. Check us out on all social media outlets. We'll see you next time.